Hey, how are you doing, guys? It's been a while. How have you been? Um, I'm good. So, in Japan, there's a society that failure will not be tolerated. So, we have to survive this society to try not to make mistakes. So, we have no second chance given by society normally. This is what we are often said by foreigners. Or rather, I think all the conservative countries around the world never allow people to make mistakes in this period of time that we can't afford to help and support someone else without anything in return. So I think a society comes to be way more severe than before by the influence of the way of meritocracy that requires us to accept rationalism. When we think about this kind of social consensus, that we have to leave losers of a society behind, disparities of income level of people and living standards are widening more and more, in other words. So this is what I feel the most sensitively. So needless to say, this kind of social problems are rampant around the Japanese society. So except for personal potential of aptitude or talent, the timing of fateful crossroads appearing in front of people that decide the outcome of successful life and failing life is the very first occupation that they are engaged in. You know what I mean? So this is a very cruel story, but this is only the story of probability theory. So you just look at the people around you. How many people are there who revived back and rolled in the world with their great effort and great hard working, with great potential of aptitude, although they walked through a very poor life and hopeless life like nowhere hired them. Even if you know some of people like them, it's just countable numbers of people, right? So most people walk through a life scenario that a society supposes because we have to adjust our sense of values to a majority of people's that forms a society. So in Japan, it is said that people's life scenario is roughly decided and fixed by the very first place to work, in many cases for most of people, in terms of what hierarchical position they finally reach and settle in a society in the future. So according to a scholar, 18 years old or 19 years old that people start working independently is already turnaround point of life. So in Japan, companies have strict assumptive simulation about relevance between age and position. The factor of age related to career design to survive in the industry or company is a very, very important factor, and all the Japanese companies places very importance on this point, although the government prohibits them from choosing applicants by age. So if you have enough skills and great experiences, that will not collapse the company's career simulation by age. Like you have already great skills and abilities to be able to assume a certain position with age that a company expects employees to assume it. It is no problem to get a job in the labor market, right? But when we think about the situation where the number of people in poverty is overwhelmingly more than these people in Japanese society, there are so many applicants looking for a job that doesn't apply to this case, whatever degree they have. So of course, companies don't want to mix something with disturbing factor that may collapse the system of organization. So those who fail to build business career after graduation from high school, college, or university that companies and industry expect people to have cannot help accepting the reality that they need to tolerate getting at any kinds of job to survive the day, even if the job is something that you can't draw your career plan and your career design in your mind. So I heard there is a high school driver who graduated from Harvard University, Harvard. But I don't actually know whether or not he intended to choose this job purposely. But if he had tolerated this job with no other choice, his career design must have been already failed, right? In the labor market, whether you can get a good living standard in upper class is the question of how you can win musical chairs in order to get vested interest that smoothly pushes you up to the upper position and upper society. So in order to get a chair, people try hard and study very, very hard to go to university or college, right? So this is a fixed scenario that the way of life that you can get fair evaluation from society and your hard work and pays really off fairly in the form of really good high salary. But if you drop out of the way that a society expects people to go through, it makes you realize that the thousands of unreasonable realities and the factors that blocks you from going to every single directions, which you may not experience if you run on the way that a society expects people to go through. You know what I mean? So this has something to do with the legal structure of society, Japanese society. So which is like in Japan, once a company hires someone, a company can't fire them easily, no matter how useless they are, but it must take care of workers as long as they can. So if applicants have the career design and academic background that HR people don't have sympathy for, they are not chosen at the stage of document screening, being regarded as the risk factor on production activities in a company. So a company wants to hire applicants with the same smell and with the same sense of values as the other workers who belongs to the company. So clearly speaking, if people don't get a full-time job once in the 20s, the possibility that they can get a full-time job is extremely low in a Japanese society from overall perspective. So most people can't overturn this social consensus, and most of people can't make a new precedent that they get full-time job for the first time when they turn 30 years old, over 30 years old. It's like a blank period in a working history is a factor to reject applicants in Japan, and challenging complete another job newly is a factor to reject applicants in a Japanese society. And only the experience working as a temporary worker is a factor to reject applicants in the Japanese society. And no academic background is a factor to reject applicants in the Japanese society. And job hunting for consolation is a factor to reject applicants in the Japanese society. And job change when they turn over 40 years old is a factor to reject applicants in the Japanese society. And the fact that former job is a entrepreneur or executive of own company is a factor to reject applicants in Japanese society. So Japan's full-time position of a company as a vested interest is firmly protected by people in a full-time position to try not to invite a disturbing factor that brings unnecessary diversity inside. So this tendency is really significant in a big Japanese company such as listing companies in Japan. And recently there is a social trend that small and medium-sized Japanese startups and companies try to adopt this way of thinking that reject diversity and only accept birds of feather flocks together. And conclusively, for those who drop out of the regular way, starting a business is the last-ditch measure to get out of the current failing circumstance. So I have no statistics data about this, but from my eyes, in Japan, the number of people who start small business because there is no other choice makes up the majority of the number of people who start small business in Japan. So it's kind of like a tech industry in Japan. It's kind of like the picture of tech industry in India. So it's like, tech industry is one exceptional job category that doesn't belong to a caste system rooted in an Indian society. Those who want to get out of the current poor situation fight to death and study very hard technology to aim for acquiring good life standard. So as one of the important reminders, abilities and skills are accepted and evaluated fairly only after you are in the right position with the right social status that a society believes that you are a trustable person. So those who can't get such a benefit from a society have to build trust from a society from the ground up through small business. It's way harder. So most people don't have energy and motivation to rise in the world with hard working while thinking nothing of this kind of disadvantages, right? So the picture of a winner and a loser always exists in the world of any generations. I don't mean to support the idea of shifting own responsibility onto a society, but those who are able to spend, stable life with stable job have to be more generous to those who fail to drop out of the way and give them a chance to revive back their life. I think it is really sad that they reject rulers who experience setback and failure even one or two times in their life. So one thing I want to tell you here, which is like how those who believe in a meritocracy and hardworking with a certain social status working for a company with high social credibility can produce the outcome after making great effort. It's totally different from how those who have small social credibility on their small business can produce the outcome after making great effort, even if the quality of effort that both of them make is the same, right? So in terms of the latter one, hard working doesn't pay off in many cases. So really, really tough. So you have to understand this point if you talk about the meritocracy and hard working.